Welcome to Connecting with Your Inner Hero. If you found your way here, you might be seeking community of individuals who face trauma and are ready to find a safe place to learn, grow, and move from surviving to thriving. We're your hosts. I'm Lisa Johnson, certified holistic health practitioner, joined by Christina Lipari, certified life and health coach.
In this episode, we will discuss the art of communication, exploring the power of listening, the different communication styles, and how it enriches our lives. Lisa, I've been doing a lot of research and studying on communication in the last 5 years, but really the last couple years, I've been really diving into different books by like John Maxwell, and then different podcasts that really talk about communication styles. And my NLP really taught me the different modalities of communicating. And just recently listened to another individual, Brené Brown, about just connecting and the courage. And one thing that I've realized in my life between personal, work, relationships, is communication, connecting with people, and communication is so key. It's the one thing that can make our life a lot easier, but at the same time makes our life extremely hard. So just wanted to really have a fluid conversation about just our experiences with communication, the things that we've learned, and just maybe provide some education around ways that we can help our listeners to feel like they can communicate.
Yes, communication is a really interesting thing in our world. Not only the fact that we have to learn how to communicate with other people, but also taking into consideration context and how other people might be receiving or perceiving what you're trying to communicate. And I think that's sometimes one of the most challenging aspects of communication. And when we can become mature and we can become curious and we can start to hear our own selves and then also be curious about what the other person might be experiencing at the same time, then when two people can be in that space of vulnerability with one another, then that's when communication becomes something that is really helpful for all the people in the communication circle, really, and we were talking a little while ago about the reason why communication can be so difficult and the reason why there are challenges in communication. And it's really because we were taught by a generation of people that were taught to be silent, and they themselves didn't know how to communicate. So it's almost like there's this learning curve here, like we're relearning a skill and we're learning how to do it in a healthy way. So I think that is super important. And that makes curiosity, right? What makes us even just ask questions, and how do we start to overcome the barriers of silence in communication?
Right. Growing up, it was always, you need to be seen and not heard unless spoken to. And I think that really puts a dialect into our brain of it's not okay to communicate. And then as we continue to grow up and mature in our life and we get into relationships and something transpires or something has hurt us in relationships, meaning not just intimate relationships, but relationships with your parents, your siblings. And you get to a point where like, do I speak up? Do I not speak up? Because I've been told it's bad. As a child, we're taught, okay, read your Bible, and then you go through school, high school, college, and you read certain aspects and certain verses, and things sometimes will click and other times they don't click. But just because I've been so focused, it's kind of like when you want to buy a car and you're driving down the highway and you see a Ford Explorer because that's the type of vehicle that you want to buy. And then all of a sudden there's Ford Explorers everywhere. And so it's kind of been that way for me lately with communication because I've really been diving into it more. And it's like all of a sudden, all the books and the podcasts and the verses in the Bible that I've been reading, it's like communication. How do we connect?
They all make sense. Yeah.
Right. It's there. Obviously there's a scientific reason why this happens, and it's a part of your brain.
It's the reticular activator that we talked about.
Yes, I was like, it's part of your brain that we talked about in one of the podcasts. And I was going to say the word, but so yeah, it's been interesting because like Proverbs 15, one of the verses about communication is a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And then in James 1:19, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two verses that we've heard throughout our whole life, right? And we hear them, but do we listen to them? Kind of like in the movie White Man Don't Jump, it's like, are you listening to me or are you hearing me? And I think that has a lot to do with our communication styles too. Are you listening to speak? Or are you listening to take in what the individual's talking about? Really to hear them, not react to them. And I think what we have in our generation is a lot of individuals are listening to respond or to fix an individual. And sometimes people don't want to be fixed. And I think that is a huge part of communication is you need to listen, because sometimes we just need to talk, get things off our chest, and it builds relationships because of that. Because knowing and understanding those boundaries of just listen to me.
Well, I was going to say that's something I've had to learn along the way. And now when somebody approaches me with something, I'll ask them what they need from me. Are you asking me for an opinion, or are you asking me for something, or are you just asking me to listen right now? And sometimes it really helps me to stay in my lane and stay within the boundaries of what that other person is asking for in that moment. And that helps to clear up misunderstandings as well. So
that's so key.
Yeah. So just being able to ask the question, like, what is this communication about in this moment?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think kind of like what we were talking about before we decide to record this morning is situations transpire in all of our lives. Our brains are going a mile a minute, right? And a certain situation that might be affecting you might not be affecting the same way to another individual that's with you. And so what I mean by that is I was listening to a Brené Brown Netflix special that she had called Call of Courage. And she was talking about a situation where her and her husband were out swimming. And she was really enjoying the moment, and she was all giddy, and she wanted to express it to him. And when she expressed it to him, he had a very negative response to her. So it triggered her immediately. And so she started getting upset, and then her anxiety started. And she was like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? So she tried to check in again with him, and she got the same response. So now she's infuriated, and she's like, what is going on? I'm trying to be, connect with him. And they end up getting back to the shore after swimming. And she was like, no, I'm not going to allow this day to be ruined because something's wrong with him. And I'm trying to be nice, and so they were able to stop and talk. And he was on a completely different level than she was. He was stressed out. He was anxious about a situation, and he didn't know how to communicate it to her. And she was trying to be intimate and loving, and she got upset. And so she said, wait, we're going to stop right now, and we're going to have a conversation about what's going on, because we're not going to ruin the rest of the day. And so he was like, at that moment was kind of like, yeah, you don't want to talk to hear me. You just want to talk to see what's wrong so you can yell at me. And so he was very defensive. And I think that that's what we do because we're so used to people reacting when we speak, because people are listening to us to react or to fix, or because their agenda is what's important. And so he was very defensive. And she's like, no, stop. Like, let's talk. And because he was like, this is what's on my mind. And she's like, oh, well, this is what was on my mind. And I completely understand where you're coming from. And he's like, no, you don't. You're just being this way because whatever. And she's like, no, listen, I want to hear you. I'm not trying to fix you. I want to hear you. I want to help you if you need help. And it got to the point where they end up talking, and it was a really great conversation, and it made the day even better for them because they stopped, they listened, they didn't react or get triggered throughout the rest of the day. It didn't ruin their day because the communication style that she chose to use was, I'm here for you.
Yes, exactly. It takes a lot of maturity to be able to pause, to open something up, and to be able to zoom in on what is actually happening and kind of come at it from a little bit more facts based as opposed to just being directly in the emotion of it. And it's okay to have emotions, and it's okay to also have facts. And sometimes when we can say, okay, this is what's happening, and as a result of it, this is what's going on for me inside.
Right.
And then have the other person say, oh, well, this is what's happening for me, and this is what's happening inside. And then to just be able to actually see each other in safety is really huge, especially when we have not had those types of communications with people, loved ones in the past. And it's a part of, I think, reorienting our nervous system, reparenting our inner child. And it's something that comes along with maturity in the healing process. And I really believe that this is a really crucial skill. And we should be teaching this to kids in high school, in all honesty. We should be teaching this to kids in middle school. And sometimes us, because of just maybe what we might have received when we were younger, we had to learn it as adults. And then I know for myself, I've done what I can to try to teach my kids what I was learning along the way.
Right.
And hoping that they'll be able to then expound upon that and grow through that as they get older as well.
Right.
But it's definitely something that, even just like in my relationship with my husband, we've had to really, really work on honing in how to communicate with one another and removing our perspective in a way of just, as opposed to just putting a judgment on what the other person is saying immediately, just getting out of that space and getting into the curiosity space.
Right.
Has been huge.
Right.
Huge.
Well, in teaching, like going back to what you said with your kids, like I've had people compliment my daughter because she connects with them with eye contact. She'll shake somebody's hand when she meets them. And to us, we were raised that way. But if you look around, there's a lot of kids who will walk up to somebody when they meet them and they're looking down and hi. And that's a form of communication. Like when someone walks up to you and says, hi, my name is, and your child looks them in the eye and says, my name is, and shakes their hand. And then the way they say, hello, sir, hello, ma'am, you know, it's those small little things when it comes to communication that you don't see taught as much as it was taught with us, for sure. Because it's, I don't know where the breakdown is. And that's what, during my research, I think about, like, our parents were very structured and strict. And then we had that structured and strict aspect as well. But then, you know, and being Generation X, it's like we try to give our children a little bit more leniency. But what I'm seeing a lot, and even with our generation, it's like our generation still has a hard time communicating because, like we said, as we've matured, we've realized, wait a minute, we weren't taught the right way when it comes to communicating. We should be more open. We should be able to speak our feelings, what's on our mind when it comes to work, the things that are affecting us. But we're very selective. But then you look at the millennials and what Gen Y, whatever, and you see their communication style, and it's more for approval.
That's interesting.
More about fitting in, not so much about being them and being who they are, right? I
think Gen X is it's. We can get into a whole discussion, obviously, about the different generations and the way that they're doing things and processing things, but I think that Gen X came out of a lot of kids that were latchkey, they were left alone a lot of the time.
Right.
Because they were the generation where moms were moving into the workplace more.
Correct.
And they were raised by a silent generation that came through depression, and they came through war, And so their parents didn't really talk about things. And so they had their own traumas to deal with. And then they were just doing the best that they could with what they have, with this new revolution in women's growth in the workplace and all of that. And so Gen X, I think, has a certain, we have like a twofold thing. Like we're tough.
Right.
We got a little bit of an edge to us because we kind of really don't give a rat's ass.
Right. Right. But we matured into not giving a rat's ass. For a minute, it took us a minute.
It took us a minute. And then we also realized like there was something that we really, really needed and that we really, really wanted. Connection. In that, yes. And it was that connection, and it was that communication style. We just wanted somebody to really listen to us and see us and to know us. Yeah. And so then we started to dig more into mental health in the 90s, and really started to dig into communication, and really started to learn about these things, because we realized that there was something wrong. And I'm really, really grateful for our generation that has done that. Because now the only thing that we can do is expound upon that. And there's so much more science and research. And I do think that it also gives us a little bit more compassion for those older generations that came through so much.
Right.
But also have boundaries and be like, yeah, we're not going to put up with that either. So I think, and that's also another part of communication is boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. And having boundaries around the way that we're communicated to, tonality of voice, or appropriateness of comments, or, I mean, not shaming me with what you're saying. I'm sorry, if you're going to give me a backhanded compliment, you can get out of here with that and just go over there.
Right.
Like there's so many things in communication that are just not acceptable anymore that I think used to be more acceptable. We just kind of had to take it and deal with it, you know?
Yeah, but now that's switched, because the things that we took because we had to, because we felt we couldn't speak up, now has gone to more of a social media aspect, where things are being said because they're behind a screen and because they're brave to attack or speak their mind. But when they're in front of somebody, things aren't being said. Like,
correct.
If someone's mad at their friend, you know, Generation X or Y, it's like, perfect example. Someone breaks up with you over a text and you're like, oh, I just spent a year with this person and I get a text message.
Yeah, what a wuss.
Other people. Yeah, exactly. And you're thinking to yourself, wait, what? You know, and I think that's the difference. Our generation was, you don't speak your mind. And if you do speak your mind, it's half-assed, because it's little zingers towards you, you know, like you said, what did you say?
Backhanded compliments.
Backhanded compliments. And now it's, here's your text message, you know, or here's your, you know, rant over social media. And it's that face-to-face. So we went from not speaking, silent generation, to starting to build communication. But now we're building communication through social media and text messaging. And it's that face-to-face is still a hard time. And that's why I feel a lot of relationships, and again, not just intimate relationships, but bonding with friends and family, is something that is so key for us to continue to work on. Because if we don't, we're going to lose that modality that is so important for any generation, not just to communicate, but to learn, be able to express emotion, be able to build healthy relationships, be able to just be who you are, opposed to fitting in.
Correct. Right? I completely agree with that. You know, you're talking about Brené Brown. And one of the things
She's awesome.
Oh my God.
I just bought like 6 books. That's how much I like her.
She's a powerhouse, man. And what I really like about her is that she actually gives you the language to dissect your feelings in order to be able to understand what's going on inside of yourself. So you could really say to somebody, hey, you know what? Like I not like, I appreciate you as a person. Like, I love you, like whatever. And I have to let you know that what I just experienced, that made me feel really frustrated, or it kind of gives you better words than just I'm sad. Like you can kind of like dig down a little bit deeper into the minutia, or even into those feelings of joy and whatever those things are. And then when the language can be better expanded, then your feelings can then be better dissected, and you can have actually a better understanding between one another because you can be a little bit more specific. And to me, that feels like even better connection, because now I can really get an understanding of what the other person is experiencing and feeling in that moment. And having the communication is very vulnerable and very connective, and it helps you to just build trust in all of these areas.
Right, exactly. Well, and communication, it allows you to be honest. It allows you to feel heard. And I think, honestly, there's so many people who feel alone right now in our world because we aren't opening our mouths. We aren't communicating. And so we feel so lonely inside, because you and I talk about journaling. Sit down, journal, get things off of your mind. But because that helps you process what's the cycling that's inside of your head. And we've talked about talk therapy and how talk therapy can be either beneficial or not, depending on the individual and circumstances. But having someone to be able to be like, hey, I'm just having a hard time today.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, I journaled this out, like, right. Like I looked at this thing that was going on, and then being able to come back to that person and say, hey, you know what? I looked at myself here, and this is what I'm struggling with. And I don't need you to fix it for me. Mm-hmm. I just need to be heard, and I need to be understood for a moment. Mm-hmm. Maybe a hug would be nice, you know?
Right.
But
100%.
Yeah. And I think the loneliness also comes from the fact that when you're talking about the texting and the social media, it's like you get 155 characters to try to expound upon this, you know, this idea or this thought or this feeling or however. So have you ever done that experiment where there's a sentence and it's the same sentence and you can read it over and over again, but you put a different inflection on a different word each time, and it changes the meaning of a sentence?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
In texting and in media, you're putting whatever intonation or inflection that you want on whichever words, which would change the whole sentence or the whole 155 characters or whatever that is. Right. As opposed to when you're actually communicating with somebody by voice, you can see their face, or you can hear how they're saying something, and the inflection put on each word is going to completely change the meaning of it as well. I think that texting and social media, and however, I just think that there's so much miscommunication that's going on in there that a person can't possibly really always be heard or feel connected with other people.
Right. Well, and then the other thing, like social media, is somebody dumps an emotion on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and at times nobody responds. Mm-hmm. And then that makes them feel even more lonely, or people respond, but not to reach out, but more on a negative aspect. Like you put down something, and I'll see this in groups, especially some of the groups that have some mental health situations going on. And someone will say, I'm having a really bad day. I just need to talk to somebody. And people will say, hey, DM me, I'll talk to you. And it's still via text. So is that person really getting out what they need to say? Because it's more with your thumbs. It's not with your voice. And so you're not expressing it with your voice. So it's still going to cycle in your brain, even though you just texted to somebody. And so that aspect is even needs to be considered, because texting something to somebody because you're having a hard day doesn't help you release the emotion like verbally communicating does.
I think that in the verbal communication as well, it's really different when you can hear somebody else's voice and you can hear the compassion, you can hear the empathy, you can hear the understanding, and there's something energetically that's exchanged in that space.
Right.
Whereas sometimes with the social media and with the texting and all of those things, there's a barrier to that energetic exchange. And the energetic exchange is actually where the healing is happening. It's kind of happening on this like quantum level versus just I don't know, whatever this new texting thing is, this newfangled thing, that these
Right.
youths are doing.
Right. Well, but after the conversation, it's like you get that feel good, like when you're in person. It's like you can hug the person and you can say, hey, thank you for sharing, give that person a hug, and you feel those emotions throughout your body. Or even like, like you and I, you're in California, I'm in Arizona, but we Zoom together and we can see our facial expressions with each other. And then we feel heard, but via text, you go off on something and then you put your phone down and you walk away. Do you really feel heard?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I remember, and this is something the younger generation, they hate picking up the phone and using the phone.
Yes.
I mean, and in all honesty, I do have a little bit of phone anxiety at times as well. I mean, and that's fine. But I remember at least being able to call people, like, I call my grandma. And I talked to my grandma for like an hour, and it's funny. I was like, this is my time to walk around the house and put things away, like,
yes. Right.
But, you're getting that actual, the
connection.
Yeah. And it's in real time. Like you said, you're not just sending a text and then putting your phone away and then coming back like an hour later and you're like, oh, they responded. And then you respond and you're having this like long drawn out textersation, and you don't even have all of the real connection that's there.
Well, and you're multitasking, like you said.
Right.
So that connection definitely isn't there. And so it goes back to kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning. Communication creates connection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I really think it's important for people to just reflect on their communication habits, and consider the areas needed for an improvement, or when something rises up inside for them, to go back within themselves and say, I wonder what that was about. That was a me problem. I wonder what happened there. And being curious with ourselves and communicating with our own selves. And then being able to get back into that space with somebody else and say, hey, this is what happened for me in that moment. What happened for you in that moment? Like, let's kind of figure this thing out and like actually connect with each other in a space and be seen and known and heard, which I think is the ultimate goal of communication: to be seen, to be known, to be heard, to collaborate.
Right.
And, in most instances, my hope for people would be that they would feel safe in doing so.
Right. Communication creates creativity. It creates communication bonding. It creates that connection. It allows emotions to be expelled and accepted. And so I agree. I think when it comes to communication, I would really just encourage listeners to do a few different things when they're going throughout the week, and really taking a look about how they're communicating with people. Do you talk over to people? When you're having a conversation with someone, do you stop, listen, and then respond? Or are you ready to talk over them to get your point across? Because what they really said, you weren't really listening to. You just wanted to get your point across. And then I think also making sure that you're listening, not to fix somebody, not to react, but just to be present, to provide validation to that other individual that has something on their mind, that wants to communicate with you. And then also think about, am I refraining from communicating because I'm so afraid to talk about my feelings? What's bothering you? It's okay to communicate. It's okay to find a safe person to have conversations with, even if it's one person. Find someone that you can trust, that they'll listen, they'll encourage you. Find the courage to be able to communicate so you don't feel so alone all the time.
Absolutely. I think that's really great. And also recognizing that there's going to be certain people that are going to be willing to work on that with you. And there's certain people that you're just going to have to meet them where they are and accept that and understand that you're only going to be able to get to such a place with them. And then there's other people that you're just going to have that really great connective experience with. And that's okay. It's okay. We just have to accept each other where they are. And that's actually just also another form of communication, because I think that people can genuinely feel when you accept them for who and how they are.
Yeah, definitely.
And then that just leaves that space open and available for future connection, if it's going to be there or if it's not. Either way is going to be fine.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say to listeners, try something new this week. Pick up the phone instead of texting somebody. Connect with a friend. Call them up. Let's go do coffee. Let's meet in person. And just see how it feels. Because I think that truly connection is so key. And communication is that first step.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks for a great podcast again today, Christina.
Yeah, I always look forward to them. Thank you.
Yep.
As we close out this episode, we hope you found valuable insights. We have more for you, though. Grab your free journal that goes along with the podcast episodes. The link is in the show notes. Let us know in the comments what part of the episode resonated with you the most. Don't forget to follow and hit the notification bell to get updates on our newest episodes. Until then, be brighter and remember, healing is always within reach.